No steering rack, no suspension springs, no axles, 55 horsepower, and yet this machine floats across open water, climbs meter-high walls, and crosses terrain that swallows million-dollar military vehicles whole. The SHERP looks like a child's drawing of a monster truck, and it is now the vehicle the United Nations deploys when nothing else on Earth can get through. The impossible engineering behind it starts with one man, a garage, and 20 years. A machine that looks like a child's drawing of a monster truck should not be able to do this. The SHERP sits squat and wide, its silhouette more like a brute amphibian than any off-road vehicle. The body is a welded steel box perched atop 4 tires so enormous they nearly swallow the rest of the frame. There is no hint of a steering rack, no suspension springs, no axles arching beneath. Instead, each wheel connects directly to the hull. No visible means of articulation, just a massive sealed hub at each corner. This is not a vehicle that flexes or leans, it simply rolls, pivots, and climbs as if the laws of terrain do not apply. Where a standard 4x4 would bog down, snap a drive shaft, or sink axle deep in mud, the SHERP glides over the surface. Its tires dwarf those of a military Humvee, measuring over 5 feet tall and holding nearly 800 liters of air each. The ground pressure drops below 0.5 pounds per square inch, less than a human footprint, allowing it to float across marshes, snowfields, and thin ice that would swallow anything else. There is a reason for every strange angle and missing part. The SHERP's mission is not comfort, speed, or style. It is pure surgical mobility in the world's most hostile environments. When the United Nations needs to reach flood survivors in South Sudan, or oil crews must cross Siberian permafrost, they call for SHERP, not because it is pretty, but because it is the only thing that gets through.
If you're enjoying this content, subscribe now.
Every visible feature is an answer to a specific, brutal problem. No steering rack to snap on hidden rocks, no springs or axles to seize in freezing mud, no low-hanging parts to catch or tear. The entire design is a rebellion against everything ordinary vehicles rely on. This is not an evolution of the SUV, it is a total rewrite. The real secrets, though, are still hidden inside. How does it steer, absorb shocks, and keep moving when every other machine fails? The geometry is only the beginning. For nearly 2 decades, Alexei Garagashyan worked alone in a Saint Petersburg garage, welding together machines from discarded steel and surplus tires. His early creations, like the Cheburator, looked more like sketches come to life, bare frames, oversized wheels, and sealed hulls that floated over swamp and snow. Each prototype solved a problem the last one could not: tire pressure, hull buoyancy, power transfer. By 2010, Garagashyan's notebooks were crowded with calculations and photos of home-built vehicles churning through waterlogged fields, each new design a little more refined than the last. The real turning point arrived in 2012. A grainy online video of Garagashyan's latest machine, massive low-pressure tires clawing through mud and then gliding across a pond, caught the eye of Vladimir Shkolnik, a Kiev-based off-road equipment dealer. Where others saw a curiosity, Shkolnik saw a breakthrough. He reached out, and by the end of the year they had signed a contract transferring the design rights. The project moved to a converted bus factory outside Kiev, and the transformation began. Hand-welded frames gave way to laser-cut aluminum chassis. The improvised diesel engine was replaced with a certified cleaner model. Tires were no longer scavenged, but custom-built 63-inch ultra-low-pressure giants engineered in Ukraine. The factory floor brought new rigor, torque checks, pressure sensors, and water tightness tests. In 2015, the first serial production SHERP rolled out, ready for export to Finland, Kazakhstan, and beyond. Every odd feature, the sealed hull, the chain drive, the missing suspension, was shaped by years of trial and error. The shift from garage to factory did not dilute Garagashyan's vision, it sharpened it, setting the stage for patents, contracts, and a machine built to master the world's toughest terrain. SHERP's tires act as the machine's lungs, each holding nearly 800 liters of air and linked by a closed manifold. When one tire meets a log or boulder, air shifts instantly to the others, equalizing pressure and letting the vehicle mold itself to the terrain. There are no springs or shock absorbers, just air moving in a silent circuit, absorbing impacts that would cripple ordinary trucks. The exhaust-driven inflator routes hot engine gases through a heat exchanger, powering a pump that adjusts all 4 tires on the move. In deep mud or on thin ice, pressure drops to 0.5 pounds per square inch, lighter than a footprint, so the SHERP floats where others sink. For water crossings, a turn of the knob brings pressure up to 12 pounds per square inch, transforming the tires into paddles for a steady 3.7 miles per hour. Stopwatch tests confirm the system shifts from mud to paddle mode in under a minute. Patent diagrams reveal a network of one-way valves and sensors, making the ground itself the SHERP's suspension. The SHERP's movement is pure mechanical audacity. Instead of turning its front wheels, it pivots the entire chassis using skid steering just like a tank. Underneath, a pair of massive industrial chains, each looped around sprockets the size of dinner plates, connects the wheels on each side.
If you're enjoying this content, subscribe now.
When the driver pulls a lever, hydraulic brakes clamp down on one chain, halting the wheels on that side. The other side keeps rolling, and the whole vehicle spins in its own length, a 360-degree pivot in less than 9 feet. There is no steering rack to bend, no tie rods to snap, just raw, direct force. When the terrain gets truly wild, like a shelf of rotten ice or a 3-foot vertical ledge, the SHERP's sealed monocoque hull and air-filled tires become a lifeline. The hull is welded shut, rated to keep out water, even if the engine stalls during the crossing. The tires, each holding 800 liters of air, act as giant pontoons. Together, they provide a buoyancy margin of over 800 kilograms, enough to keep the vehicle afloat with a full payload. In field tests, SHERP crews have driven straight out of open water and clawed up ice ledges nearly 1 meter high, the tires deforming and gripping like the paws of an amphibian. If a chain snaps or a sprocket jams, the entire drive system can be stripped and rebuilt with basic hand tools, no specialist parts, no computer diagnostics. In the worst conditions on Earth, this is what survival looks like, a machine that can turn on a dime, float when all else sinks, and be fixed in the mud by the hands that drive it. The SHERP's engine is a study in restraint, just 44 to 55 horsepower, less than most compact sedans. On paper, it sounds almost laughable for a machine that weighs over 2 tons and rolls on tires taller than a grown man. But here, brute force takes a back seat to torque and gearing. The diesel power plant feeds into a reduction gearbox with a staggering 1:36 ratio, trading speed for unstoppable crawling power. The payoff is immediate. Maximum torque arrives at wheel speeds as low as 50 revolutions per minute, letting the vehicle heave itself over meter-high obstacles and claw its way up 30-degree slopes without breaking a sweat. Where ordinary off-roaders rely on high revs and electronic traction aids, The SHERP's drivetrain is brutally simple. Chains, sprockets, and planetary gears do all the work, delivering force so reliably that breakdowns are almost unheard of, even in the worst conditions. This is not a vehicle for racing across open ground. It's a surgical tool built to crawl, climb, and survive where horsepower alone means nothing. Fuel isn't hidden in a belly tank or wedged behind a rear axle. On the SHERP, it lives inside the wheels themselves. Each rim holds 58 liters of diesel, sealed within a steel hub that doubles as a fuel cell. With 4 wheels, that's 232 liters riding at the very edges of the chassis, enough to push this machine over 400 miles without a single refuel. This radical packaging isn't just about endurance, it drops the center of gravity, boosting stability on side slopes and during water crossings. Refilling is as direct as topping up a jerry can, but the payoff is a vehicle that can crawl, float, and climb for days, far beyond the reach of any conventional off-roader. In disaster zones where helicopters are grounded and roads vanish into floodwater, the SHERP becomes a lifeline. United Nations convoys have pushed SHERPs through the swamps of South Sudan, hauling food and medical kits to villages unreachable by any other vehicle. World Food Program After Action reports record these monster trucks crossing 22 kilometers of submerged terrain in a single run, their ground pressure so low they leave barely a trace on fragile wetlands. Operators in Mozambique and Uganda have used remote-control SHERPs to deliver grain and evacuate patients, sending the vehicle ahead to test for mines or unstable ground. Oil geologists in the Siberian permafrost rely on the same platform to reach wells buried 200 kilometers into marsh, where breakdown means days of isolation. In each case, the SHERP's radical engineering, its floating tires, sealed hull, and chain drive, translates directly into lives saved and missions completed, not just mechanical spectacle. No machine is invincible. Maintenance logs from United Nations field operators show that chain drives and tire valves demand regular checks, and tire wear accelerates in volcanic rock or sharp ice. An independent engineer calls it the ultimate task tool, perfect for mud, flood, or swamp, but never a substitute for speed, comfort, or highway range. The SHERP's radical minimalism means every gain comes with a trade-off, simple to fix, but only if you accept its limits. For those who need a rescue line across the impossible, that's the deal. Right now, billion-dollar armored trucks bog in mud, but a 55-horsepower Amphibian rolls through because physics, not prestige, dictates survival. As disaster zones multiply and climate extremes intensify, the SHERP's radical minimalism isn't just an engineering marvel. It is a blueprint for reaching where help is needed most. What would you redesign next?
If you're enjoying this content, subscribe now.